Hello and welcome to the first September edition of Let's Talk Criterion. Rob Reiner was a very well-known comedy actor, especially for his appearance as Michael Meathead Stivic in the CBS situation comedy All in the Family. He retained the role in that show for 8 years. But his time as a director showed him turning his talent to classic films like This Is Spinal Tap, The Sure Thing, not to mention Stand By Me, 1986, based on the Stephen King novella. He then turned his attention in 1987 to comedy and fantasy with The Princess Bride, one of his most popular films. Now, The Princess Bride is a 1987 American fantasy adventure directed and co-produced by Rob Reiner, and it stars Cary Elwes, Robin Wright, Mandy Patinkin, Chris Sarandon, Wallace Shawn, Andre the Giant, and Christopher Guest. Adapted by William Goldman from his 1973 novel of the same name, it tells the story of a swashbuckling farmhand named Westley, accompanied by companions befriended along the way, who must rescue his true love, that's Princess Buttercup, from the odious Prince Humperdinck. Now, the film preserves the novel's metafictional narrative style by presenting the story as a book, being read by a grandfather to his sick grandson. Now, in 2016, the film was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Now, I mentioned this recently on my live stream with Chris Mohan and how important the National Film Registry is regarding Criterion and their choice to induct films from that registry into their collection. Now, this film is already in the collection, of course, and is now getting a well-earned 4K UHD upgrade. When William Goldman began the path to writing The Princess Bride, which was published in 1973, it had been born out of a nighttime yarn for his two daughters, one of whom wanted a story with a princess and the other desiring that of a bride. Presented with his tongue firmly planted in its cheek, The Princess Bride was intentionally exploring the genesis of fairy tales and fantasy within its own self-aware artificiality. Now, this is about the need for passing morality plays from one generation to the next, usually involving the theme of true love. However, the real cleverness of Goldman's novel came from deconstructing this heritage while simultaneously paying it homage. Traditionally, fairy tales end with a young heroine becoming engaged to a prince or some other form of royalty. Instead, The Princess Bride, with its juvenilely titled Princess Buttercup character, used this frequent epilogue as a giant springboard into a larger story that involves multiple protagonists with layered agency, and it contextualizes the idea of true love in a modern term with a timeless backdrop. It also does so with plenty of fun. The real story exists in another story, the type where a weathered grandfather, that's Peter Falk, dislodges his flu-ridden grandson's antipathy to all but computer games with the words, "Once upon a time." Once we're upon a time, Reiner takes a tone somewhere between the Brothers Grimm and the Brothers Zucker, and allows events to spill out without registering a smidge of genuine peril, coated as it is in an affectionate comic glaze. And sample alone the characters, mainly stereotypes, just doing their time-honoured bit that bit more excitedly. Now, the other success, of course, with The Princess Bride was in the casting. Rob Reiner chose Cary Elwes as the dashing hero, seemingly to have dug up Errol Flynn's swagger and adding a layer of insincerity as thick as a Swiss gateau. Then there's Robin Wright as the fair damsel in distress Princess Buttercup, who seems to have drifted in from a sitcom. Or how about the arch swordsman Inigo, played by Mandy Patinkin, whose bouncy dash was stolen wholesale by Antonio Banderas for Zorro. Everything is exaggerated, but with all of Goldman's postmodern twinkles and Reiner's clean-cut vision, rejecting the regulation mud-pile milieu of anything vaguely medieval, he sends this merry bunch vaulting about the countryside with its clutter of icky beasts and oddballs. It should only be treasured. And they even let Billy Crystal play a small wizardling called Miracle Max as a jabbering Yiddish. 3 brigands were led by the more than capable Wallace Shawn as a scheming little conniver, and includes Andre the Giant as Fezzik the Giant, a crusher who may not necessarily have a heart of gold. And it's Shawn, of course, who tosses the princess to the screaming eels with great relish. Now, Reiner had quickly decided on Cary Elwes for Westley, based on his performance in Lady Jane. However, during the casting period in LA, Elwes was in Germany on set for Masheka, and Reiner flew out to Berlin to meet with Elwes, confirming his appropriateness for the role. Now, while Reiner and casting director Jane Jenkins auditioned for other actors for Westley, they really knew that Elwes was perfect for the part. Elwes had read the book in his childhood and associated himself with the character of Westley, but never believed he would have the opportunity to play him in a film. Now, Robin Wright was cast late in the process, about a week before filming began. Reiner and Jenkins had auditioned a number of English actresses, but they hadn't found their ideal Princess Buttercup. Uma Thurman, for instance, Meg Ryan, Sean Young, Susie Amis, Courtney Cox, Alexander Paul, and even Whoopi Goldberg auditioned for the role of Buttercup. Wright's agent had heard the casting call and encouraged Wright to audition for the part. Now, although initially shy, Wright did impress Jenkins and later, of course, the director Rob Reiner. Mandy Patinkin and Wallace Shawn were fairly early choices for the cast. Shawn in particular was chosen due to his diminutive size, to contrast that of the giant Fezzik. Danny DeVito was considered for the role of Vizzini. Liam Neeson also auditioned for the role, but he was turned down due to his height. Now, near the end of the casting, the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, told Jenkins that Andre's match in Tokyo had been cancelled, and that cleared him to play the role of Fezzik. For his part, Andre found his participation was a gratifying experience, considering that no one stared at him on set during production as a kind of freak, but instead they simply treated him as a fellow member of the cast. Now, with the expert direction of Rob Reiner, whose clear talent for parody and comedic timing ruled overall, making this feature into something more than the sum of its parts. Now, the film was shot in very picturesque English and Irish locations, and they included Carlwark in Sheffield, England, Burnham Beeches in Buckinghamshire, England, Lathkildale, where it meets Kalesdale, and that's the Battle of Wits scene filmed there, Cave Dale in Castleton, Derbyshire in England, Bradley Rocks and Robin Hood's Stride in Birchover in Derbyshire in England, Cliffs of Moher in County Clare in Ireland, that's where the Cliffs of Insanity were, Haddon Hall, Bakewell, Derbyshire, England, that's where they make the tarts, Penshurst Place in Kent in England. Now, the original soundtrack album was composed by Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits and released by Warner Brothers in the US and Vertigo in the UK, and that was in November 1987. The album contained the song Storybook Love, performed by Willie DeVille and produced by Mark Knopfler. And that song was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song at the 60th Academy Awards. Now, the presentation on the original Blu-ray release was something rather special, with the book like digipack housing with a special cloth material making the cover. The disc and the essays and notes were presented as a story entitled How It All Happened, and even the rear of the book cover was kept clean with just some small removable adhesive spots holding it onto the back. And what features, of course, were contained on the discs have been reproduced again in the same layout for this 4K release. Now, recent rumours may indicate that the case may have changed. It may just be a plastic case, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, the special features have all been ported over, and they are quite extensive, and they are an audio commentary featuring director Rob Reiner, screenwriter William Goldman, producer Andrew Scheinman, and the actors Billy Crystal and Peter Falk. There's an edited audiobook reading of Goldman's novel The Princess Bride by Rob Reiner himself, a programme about Goldman's screenplay, Another programme about Goldman's Tapestry, based on his novel. Interviews with Reiner, Goldman, and the actors Billy Crystal, Carrie Elwes, Christopher Guest, Mandy Patinkin, Chris Sarandon, Fred Savage, and Robin Wright. Interview with the art director Richard Holland. Programmes about makeup, fencing, and fairy tales. An on-set video diary filmed and narrated by Carrie Elwes. 5 behind-the-scenes videos with commentaries accompanying them by Reiner, Scheinman, and Billy Crystal. There's a trailer for the film, and as always, there's an essay by author Sloane Crossley and Goldman's introduction to his Princess Bride script from his collection 4 screenplays, and it's all, of course, on the Blu-ray. Certainly, it's in a lavishly illustrated cloth-bound book, but as I say, it may not be that for the 4K release. Cover art is by Angela Rizza. Of course, this wasn't the height of Rob Reiner's career. In fact, only the start, where he went on to direct such modern Hollywood classics as When Harry Met Sally, with Billy Crystal again, and revisiting Stephen King's work from Misery, and capturing on film the Broadway play A Few Good Men, working with Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, and Jack Nicholson, as well as countless film and TV appearances as an actor himself. He's currently aged 76, and he recently narrated the film Family Squares in 2022, and he certainly shows no signs of retiring. The Princess Bride is a tale full of swashbuckling romance and outrageously hilarious spoofery, directed by Rob Reiner from an endlessly quotable script by William Goldman. The Princess Bride reigns as a fairy tale classic. It comes in a 4K upgrade with the HDR Dolby Vision to the Criterion Collection in the US on Tuesday the 5th of September as existing spine 948. Next week, we look at Nicholas Roeg's seminal 1971 feature, Walkabout, getting its 4K upgrade from Criterion. So until then, I will leave the final word to Inigo. Goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Stop saying that!